welcome to our first attempt at a parent workshop on behaviour education at our school. And it's really lovely to see so many people here. As I've been saying, you know, if we get people coming, we'll offer more of these workshops in the future. So thank you for coming, and please spread the word if you enjoy today's workshop, which I'm absolutely certain you will, because I have heard Mark speak before, hence the reason for inviting him down here. Mark Lemessurier is a very accomplished author and also a behaviour education guru in our state. He works out of Fullerton House, works with individual students who are in need of support from behaviour education, but he also travels around Australia speaking at the capital cities, and you've just finished a round of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've been talking about mental illness.
We have, or just mental and emotional well-being in young people and youth, and how to, I'll mention a little bit about that in a while.
Yeah, so that sounded really interesting. I was tempted to come and hear you speak. I first met Mark over the phone, actually, when I was teaching at Highgate Junior Primary School, because there was a student who was in need of support, and Mark was actually tutoring that student at the time. And so I was really impressed by the very sincere and you know, dedicated approach that he had towards that student, and we worked together to support that boy. Then I met him through, that actually stimulated me to ask you to speak at a parent workshop at Norwood, and 5 schools were getting together to actually offer workshops to parents and other community members, and that went down so well that when I came here I thought we've got to have Mark down to Myponga. So I welcome you here.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming down all this way.
It was quite a good drive against the traffic. It was okay. Yeah.
And I think everyone's going to get huge benefit from listening to Mark. Any little pearl of wisdom that you can pick up about that very hard job of parenting and teaching is you know, a bonus, isn't it? And really helps us and supports us, because it's a tough role, isn't it, parenting?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so welcome, Mark, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. And that's probably a really good place to start, that it is a really tough gig, parenting. And certainly for me, when you leave here today, I hope you have an enjoyable time. I hope that I'm able to construct some thoughts in your mind that you can take away with you and that might be of benefit to you. But I think one of the messages that I really want you to take away is that parenting is tricky and it's ever changing. And certainly in my world, working with families, working with kids in school as well, and straddling between families and school, we've got ever increasing pressures on kids and mums and dads. Pressures to an extent where, in my practice, I'm seeing more and more grandparents actually raising kids too, with mums and dads for all sorts of reasons who can't raise their own kids. So it's lots of pressures. I think parenting's a bit akin to that lovely poster. Have you ever seen of the graceful looking swan on this serene lake? And it's the mother, I suspect, looking like all is at peace in the world. But in fact, when you look at the cross section below the lake, there's this really turbulent current pushing past, and she's going like anything to keep up with it and to keep it all together. And I think that's often how parenting really is. It looks like everybody else seems to be doing just a little bit easier, but we're working really hard. Truth is, we go through phases, we go through patches, and a lot of it depends on where we are with our health, where we are with our emotion, but equally where our kids are and where they are in terms of growing up. Am I an expert? Well, I have to tell you, I had a real giggle. There was an article in the Advertiser, I don't know if anyone saw it a couple of weeks ago, about parenting, and then of course they got the comment from the world's greatest expert that they always get, and of course I was the world's greatest expert, and my wife just cracked. She goes, "Oh, you're an expert now. If only they could come home and live with us." I think you become an expert, don't you, because you're just around for a long time and you enjoy your work and you're committed to your work and you just become a bit of a go-to person. But I don't think I'm much more of an expert than most of you, to be honest. A bit of background about me. I'm a dad. and I'm married to Sharon. We've been married for a long time. Both of our kids have left home. And we still love each other, which is excellent. We've worked on some replacement therapy because we've still got a lot of love, and so we've got 2 whippets, and they're great fun. Hence the white bits of fur that you'll find over me if you get too close. I work at a place called Fullerton House, and I have done for the last 15 years, and prior to that I was a teacher, and at Fullerton House I've taken on counselling and teaching, and I work with a range of kids. And some of those kids have those classic labels that you've heard about or that you might experience at home, and they are labels like ADD, kids with ADHD, the greedy ones that have the combination of both, where they're hyper at school and they're spacey at home and confused and don't hear your instructions. Kids with auditory processing difficulties, lots of kids who are on the spectrum. My wife often calls me the Asperger magnet. And it's as if we've got a sign at the front of our building that says, boys only, mainly for Asperger syndrome. Or these days, of course, since it's changed to mainly with ASD. I work with kids with learning difficulties, a range of learning difficulties from dysgraphia, dyscalculia to dyslexia. I work with kids who have oppositional defiant disorder, and that diagnosis seems to be becoming more prevalent in schools with kids, and teachers are battling quite often to work with very tricky behaviours and understanding the emotions behind those behaviours. And I'm finding myself in schools doing more and more and more work with staff to scratch below the surface and to look at how we might respond to these tricky behaviours just differently, so these kids feel supported and they feel like they don't have to go into battle against us. Who are the bravest kids for me that I work with? You know, I also work with kids who, I guess, are going through troubled times. Mum and dad who have split up, children who are working and suffering grief through a bereavement in their family. So I work with kids without classic labels too, but the brave ones that always come to my mind, they'd have to be the kids on the spectrum. They're kids with autism spectrum disorder. And why do I say that? Well, just think about school. You think about school and you think, what do you need to be successful at school? You need 2 things. The first thing is you need to be pretty social. You need to be able to fit in. School's about a big world of people. School's about fitting in, working in groups, whether you're out in the yard, whether you're in a classroom. School's about reading facial expressions. What's she thinking? Is she happy? Has she had a good morning? Is she feeling stressed? Am I boring her to death? Why is she looking at that person with that look? What are they saying to each other with their faces and with their eyes? You know, that stuff that most of us can actually process really quickly, and it's social interplay between people. Can you imagine not having those skills? Just not having those skills. How brave are you that you actually have to face up to school every day and second guess your every instinct? Those kids for me are really, really brave. And there's a second group of kids who I think are incredibly brave. And they're the kids who have learning difficulty. They're the kids who have dyslexia. Ask any Littlie before they start school, what do you want to learn when you go to school? And you know what they'll say, don't you? Most of them will go, oh, I want to learn to read. You know, I really want to learn to read. And why do they want to learn to read? Because the lucky ones have had mum and dad for years reading stories to them, watching them decode these strange symbols off the page and firing their imagination with all kinds of stories. You know, I want a bit of that myself. I reckon that's going to be really good value. And you also, as a kid, you get to a certain point by 4 or 5 years of age that when you do something wrong at home and your mum and dad decide to sound words out in front of you to get messages across and you don't get it, it's time to crack the code, you know? So there's another reason there too. They're the brave kids, because can you imagine actually heading off to school with that dream to read? But in fact, it doesn't take you very long at all, just a matter of weeks, even sometimes less, to understand, I don't read like the other kids. I can't remember the letters and the sounds. I get the letters and the sounds mixed up. I can't sound through a three-letter word. By the time I get to the end of the word, I've forgotten the sound at the beginning of the word and I can't put it together. I forget sight words, they drop out. And the other kids, well, they race through the glorified reading boxes. And these kids, well, they don't live up to the dream that they've had and they burn with humiliation. For me, I've been lucky enough to be working with Generation Next, which is the group that Annette mentioned, and it is a group who's very concerned about the well-being, about the emotional and the social well-being and the emotional health or mental health of young people, kids and teenagers in the future. They're our next generation. And I've been presenting, and I've just finished my last workshop for them. And I've been presenting a number of workshops called dyslexia, behaviour, depression, because the three actually go together really nicely as a package. In my talks, I've now reached 5,500 teachers, 5,500 people with an investment in young people. And in my talks, I show a video clip which I'd like to show you because I think it's very poignant. And it's a video clip of a young man, Tim, who at 7 years of age knew he had a reading difficulty and he decided to deal with it in a particular way.
It was the summer school holidays and Timothy had been quite upset because he didn't want to go back to school. So he, had a few tantrums and couldn't work it out, or like why, what was the point. And this last week, Timothy was in the lounge and his brother and sister were sleeping. I heard this thud and I didn't sort of think anything of it at first, but then it happened again, a few seconds later. So I went to the lounge room and because I knew that Tim was in there, and I walked to the door and there's Timothy on the couch doing a handstand with his feet up against the wall. He literally pushed himself up like this, with his feet sort of going up in the handstand, I suppose, and then pushed his feet off the wall, pulled his hands straight out, and then his head hit the couch. And I just went running over there, yelling at him really, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I just grabbed him and said to him, "My God, you are going to break your bloody neck." And he goes, "I know." Real calm, just real calm, "I know." And I said to him, "Well, if you know, why are you doing it? Don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself." And he said, "No, I know that's going to happen. I don't want to be here." And I sort of naively said to him, "Well, if you don't want to be here, turn off the telly, come out into the kitchen, do something else." And he just kind of said, No, you don't understand. I don't want to be here. I want to die and I don't want to feel this way anymore. And if I'm dead, then I won't feel like this and then I don't have to go to school because I don't want to go to school. So if I die, there's no school." And I sort of said to him, "It's going to be okay. Everything's actually all right." And he said, "No, Mum, that you can't help me, Mum, because I'm never going to learn to read." After that, we rang the school to say, "This has happened, we need to do something." So they said that what we need to do is get him talking to a psychologist and maybe have a psychological assessment, and it turned out that he was dyslexic. I find it interesting that teachers, and can I say this one thing? I find it interesting. I suppose not really a concern, but that they wouldn't know what work has to be put in for these kids between then and now.
Okay. If we have time at the end of this session, probably won't, but if we do, I'll show you the follow-up video for Tim. He's 15 now, and he's found his strengths, and he's been able to compartmentalise and normalise his learning difficulty. But learning difficulties are really tricky for kids, and they're often undersung and underdone by great parents and by great teachers, because kids know no matter how well their parents talk up how good they are, kids know no matter how well their teachers differentiate the curriculum, they haven't got the currency to be successful in school. And what's the currency? The capacity to decode print. It's a really hard one. What else do I need to tell you about me? So I've got 2 kids, they're perfect. And that's of course why I've written some books about kids, this one and Parenting Tough Kids. But none of you believe that they're perfect, do you? No, they've made a lot of mistakes, just like your kids have, just like some of your kids will. Okay, and I've got a big kid, and probably my big kid is has been our greatest challenge, because she's very determined, got an oppositional edge, intelligent, argumentative, strong-willed, stubborn, but I guess it has prepared her to be a very independent and good person. As an adult, she works overseas as a microbiologist, and my youngest one, Noni, who is 26, 27, she actually now works in my practice with me, and it's joyful actually working with your own child, and she's sort of bringing her skills into my practice working with her clients. So that's a really different kind of journey for me, and one that we're just nudging along and enjoying very much together. I guess going back to dyslexic kids, one of the things that I want to raise here today, while I've got a moment and a small crowd in front of me, and one of the things that I've been raising to stakeholders in the lives of young people, is really, when it comes to dyslexia, we need to right some wrongs, and we've got to stop being so complacent. You know, it's 2013, dyslexia is recognised as a disability in our community, but it is not recognised as a disability in our schools, not in the public system, not in the independent system, not in the Catholic system. That is a wrong, and we should be really angry. We shouldn't even be sitting here doing nothing about it. We should be angry, and we should all be doing something about it. That's something from last century or further back. The other thing that I've been raising an awareness around is early screening for learning difficulties and dyslexia are really easy to do. They can be purchased. You know, Angela Fawcett, for example, has had a dyslexia screening test available for little kids and for high school kids and anywhere in between, around for years and years and years. We can screen kids like that in schools when they're 5 years old, when they're 4 years old, that give us some really good indicators whether they're likely to have a learning difficulty. Why don't we do it? Why do we wait? Why are we content to wait for kids to fall through the cracks, knowing that if their reading's stalled by the end of year 2 and they're not moving, their prognosis for finishing school is very poor, but we're happy to sit back, let that happen, and we wait for the NAPLAN test to give us some indication that something's wrong. Go figure. And then the other thing that really worries me is that when you look at good reading research, how to teach reading, we've still got so many teachers in schools that don't know how to teach it. They don't know what the research says. They don't know how to identify reading difficulties. They don't know how to teach reading so kids who are dyslexic and a whole group of kids who aren't dyslexic but are having trouble engaging with print actually get grabbed at the same time and dragged along. We actually are currently happy with parents withdrawing their kids out of the system because this kind of support isn't available in most of our systems, and they go to private people in the community, and parents pay a fortune for specialised support. It should be in all schools with all postcodes. Okay.